Welcome to the Straight from the Source's Mouth podcast. Frank talk about sex and dating.
Hello, and welcome to episode number 36 of season 2. My name is Tamara, and you're listening to the Straight from the Source's Mouth podcast, Frank talk about sex and dating. Today's guest is Chris Shelton. Today we're going to talk about past trauma, healing, and Qigong. If you like this episode, be sure to tell your friends about it and rate it as well. Thanks for joining me today, Chris.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on your show. Jump to the chase. There's so much trauma and there's different types of trauma. We could talk about trauma around sex. We could talk about, child abuse, neglect, and those kinds of things. What are the remedies? What kinds of things can we do to help to change that vibration that's trapped inside the body? Because the style of Chinese medicine that I practice, where we do address these types of symptoms, they say that the leading cause of death and disease is emotional trauma. I live here in Los Angeles, California, and I'm surrounded by some really beautiful and amazing people. And there's quite a few of those beautiful people that work out all the time, that sleep well and drink enough water, eat the right foods, and still dying of carotid artery disease. So what is the one thing that they're missing? And that's what's going on in their mental emotional state.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, it's interesting. And I can see after you said all that, I can see why that would be the case. But yeah, and what do you see to do? Or we can talk about the different types of traumas or how they affect the body differently if they do, or is it all kind of in the same?
No, that's a very great question. And that's what we do to educate people. I have my first book on Qigong. So the practice to help eliminate these emotional patterns and trauma is a practice called Qigong, and it's spelled Qigong. And this is a 5,000-year-old practice. It's the foundation of Tai Chi. It's the foundation of acupuncture. And they're very gentle, moving, and meditative practices that are all meant to do something medicinally inside your body, in particular to work with the different organs and their associated systems. So let's start off with the heart. The heart is the emperor or empress of the body, and the heart will dictate how much of an emotion will be expressed or suppressed. And then from there, the emotions that directly attack the heart will be emotions of abandonment, loneliness, lack of joy. Believe it or not, overexcitation. Most people don't realize this, but you could actually die of a heart attack from laughing too hard. But it'll take all the emotions. I mean, think about it. If you get angry, what happens? Your heart races, right? If you get fearful, your heart races. So from there, let's talk about anger and resentment and old anger. And then that attacks your liver and your gallbladder. So hatred, old anger, resentments, that attacks the liver and gallbladder and shows up as disease. But again, it goes through the heart first. If you're grieving something, if you're sad, if you have a lot of shame or guilt, maybe you have body dysmorphia or guilt around some of your actions, that attacks your lungs and your large intestine. Okay. If you're worried about something, if you're anxious, if you have anxiety, if you overthink things too much, over-intellectualize, then what happens is that weakens your spleen and your pancreas. And we see a number of diseases that show up, a lot of diseases that show up because of those emotions. And then going back to fear, if we have fear or PTSD around certain things, and going back to sex also, if you have any sexual trauma, that attacks your kidneys and your bladder. And but fear, but also shock. So anything that you've seen that's shocking, let's say you survived a severe illness, a car accident, or let's say you survived abuse, child abuse, molestation, whatever, that will weaken your kidneys. And it shows up as so many different types of diseases inside the body.
Wow. And then, so how do you release it? I know that's like pretty much your practice.
Yeah. So the way that we release it is that unlike conventional therapy, and I'm speaking from firsthand experience, I grew up in an abusive, traumatic home. Unlike conventional therapy, where sometimes you go in and you talk about the situation or you dig up old things, it's kind of like they pick the scab off and you leave there and you feel worse. Like, I feel more like shit than what I did when I walked in, right? Yeah. So the difference with Qigong is that there's specific movements for all these internal organs. So let's say you have a lot of anger and resentment. Then there's a movement called the liver move, or there's a healing sound with the liver. Now, the difference is when I do this movement, what will happen is that I tell my clients or my students to focus on the liver, which is located on the right side of the body. Imagine a green cloud filling up into the liver because the color green is associated with the liver. And I want you to focus on a specific traumatic event that made you angry. It could be something recent too, like, I don't know, somebody cut you off on the road or something. So I want you to feel it. Who's involved? What was involved? Bring everything to the present moment like it just occurred. And then as you inhale and as you're doing this movement, then what you're going to do is that you're going to, as you exhale, you're going to allow for that circumstance to leave like a dark cloud. So you inhale, pull the green cloud in, think of the circumstance associated with the liver. And then from there, as you exhale, imagine leaving like a dark cloud going several feet away from the body and deep into the ground. Now, the healing sound for the liver is shoo, like shouting, shoo. And if you wanted to do that, you could do that sound also. I honestly like the healing sounds because they're so simple to do. And it's something you could take with you everywhere. Obviously, if you're outside in public, if you're angry at something, you're not going to be doing it out loud. Well, it depends on where you live. Certain parts of LA here, it would be acceptable for you to do that.
Yeah.
But you would focus on it. You do it underneath your breath instead. And imagine that circumstance, whatever that is, leaving like a dark cloud and going away from the body. But again, bringing it back to the heart's the emperor, empress of the body. So at some level, we have to address the heart as well, too. So the healing sound for the heart is ha, like laughing. And like I said a few minutes ago, you could actually die of a heart attack from laughing too hard. And if you think about it, if you have a situation that shows up, or if you have a laughing attack at something, what is the first thing you and everybody else does? We all go, why? Because the heart is trying to regain balance once again. So what you do is you focus on a circumstance, whether it's sadness or whatever, or loss or disappointment, feel it, who's involved, what's involved again, and maybe you just have this overall sense of sadness and you can't pinpoint. I want you to focus on that sadness. Inhale, imagine a pink cloud filling up into the heart because the color red and pink is associated with the heart. And as you exhale, making the sound. Imagine that circumstance leaving like a dark cloud. And do that over and over again, 5, 10, 15 minutes. Now, if you're in public, once again, probably won't be doing the sound audibly, so you do it inaudibly. Inhale. And then what will happen is that instead of you suppressing it, which creates more trauma and inflammation and disease and mental illness, you actually are releasing that trauma as it comes into your life, into your sphere, or even letting go of the old trauma. And it's the old trauma that we want to release. Is because a lot of people think, oh, well, I don't get stuck in the past. I have these traumatic experiences and I just move on. Well, for most of us, yeah, we do that. We move on. But one of the ways that I could diagnose in Chinese medicine is I could read a person's face. So when a patient comes in, I could tell what kind of trauma that they have. I could tell how much anger they have, or how much sorrow or hurt that they have, or disappointment. And what's great about it then is that it tells me also potential diseases inside the body, for which I know how to approach the disease now. But also, too, like I tell my patients, if that line or feature on your face is still there, that means that somewhere in your tissues is that trauma. So that's the cool thing about Qigong, is that it doesn't discriminate against age, gender, ethnic background. It's not a spiritual belief structure, so it doesn't discriminate against your religious or spiritual beliefs. What it's doing is that it's working with the systems of your body at a deeper level. So I understand how your body functions according to science. In fact, I love science. I love physiology. I love anatomy. The body is such a miraculous thing. But in Chinese medicine, we have thousands of years of study on the human organism, not just a few hundred years. Because science is still relatively new in comparison.
Yeah, for sure. And is there certain traumas that are easier or harder or take longer? Like how long can it take to release something from like any of the, like the heart? I guess since we're in dating and sex, so like for the heart, how long can it?
Yeah, well, heartache or heartbreak, those types of things. And also, too, if there's a situation with the heart, especially with men, let's say being closed off, then you could have things like impotence that show up. Now, there's other organs that play a role in those performance issues, like the liver and the kidneys also play a role. But yeah, if that heart is cut off, is shut down, then that will play a role in intimate relationships, right, moving forward. And so, it's a layering, and sometimes the release can be really fast. It can be very quick. Sometimes it takes a while. But the more that you apply this as a daily practice, kind of like brushing your teeth every day, you'll start to see that, like, wow, I'm feeling lighter and I'm feeling better. We have a YouTube channel. It's called Shelton Qigong. And every week almost every week, we put out a video on some health related topic. And the comments that I get from people around the world of how these practices have helped cure them of PTSD, have helped cure them of these inflammatory diseases is tremendous. And what these people have done is that because they got no answers from anybody else of how to deal with this stuff, I was their last hope, so to speak, And so they actually would apply these practices daily. And then as a result of that, they saw the transformation in their life. And then what happens is that then they make these amazing comments. And, we're all a vibration. Emotional trauma is a vibration. It's a dark, heavy vibration. When we start to loosen that and relieve that, especially vibrations of the heart itself, then what happens is that then you start to draw in people at a higher frequency, which if somebody's at a higher frequency, it helps us to break our old patterns where we draw in certain people over and over again into our personal relationships or intimate relationships. So it helps to break those patterns. And then it helps to bring in a higher vibrational being as well, right? Because we're all vibration. So we either attract or we deflect, right? And depending on where we are. And even if you're at a higher vibration, it doesn't mean that you're better than somebody else. It just means that you have a different understanding of life and what's important, what's not important. And it means also that you've processed and worked or on the journey of working through these traumas.
Yeah, more personal work and your patterns and learning all that stuff, and which is one of the reasons I did this podcast too, is just providing resources. So if there's all kinds of books out there, are there any books you recommend for this kind of stuff, or just watch your own YouTube channel? Or 'cause I know there's one book, The Body Keeps the Score, and I know Oprah wrote a book with What Happened to You, and then Untethered Soul talks about releasing trauma too. So if anyone wants to read, but what were you going to say? Sorry.
Yeah. So I have a book out on Qigong, and it describes the practices, and it describes the mental emotional component, and then how to get rid of it. But also what the book describes is potential diseases, common diseases that we see show up as well too. And so obviously that first book. My second book comes out this year on how to fix back problems from the head, neck, all the way, so cervical spine, down to the lumbar. And going back to the heart and trauma, this is very fascinating, is every single cervical issue that I've seen, neck, frozen shoulder, frozen neck, cervical arthritis, stenosis of the cervical spine, is unless you're doing jiu-jitsu and you popped your shoulder out, or you're a pitcher, you popped your shoulder out, every single issue that I've ever seen always comes back to emotions of the heart. Every single one. Every single one. And what we'll tend to do, though, is that we're not in tune with our bodies, and we'll go to bed. We'll have something happen, or maybe we have a breakup, or somebody mistreated us, right? And we go to bed. We have a nasty fight. We go to bed, and the next day we wake up and can't move our head, and we think, oh, I got to replace that mattress, or I got to replace my pillow. And it has nothing to do with the pillow or the mattress. It's your body's way of knocking on your back door, saying, "Listen to me. That hurt you. That hurt you." And I'll give you a case study. So Mike Kroger, the guitarist from Nickelback, flew into my office in San Jose, because we live in have a clinic in the San Francisco Bay Area as well too. And he had cervical arthritis, and you can see it on his X-ray. And the only reason why I'm bringing up my friend Mike is because He did a testimonial for me on YouTube. And if you scroll down my YouTube, you'll see from the TV show Celebrity Sweat, you'll see this interview of what I'm talking about. And he flew in. You can see the x-ray, and he's supposed to go in for surgery. And I said, okay, Mike, I said, 2 years ago, before this showed up, this pain, I said, what was going on in your life? Now, he's a rock and roll star from a famous rock and roll band, right? He's like, oh, I think it's a stress of being on tour. I think the way I hold my guitar on stage, He goes, or maybe just the way I slept or something. And then he paused and he thought about it. And he said, you know what? Actually, 2 weeks before this showed up, my horse died. Mm-hmm. So his horse died, took care of business, went back on tour, and his body woke him up one day and said, guess what? You pretend like that didn't hurt you, but it did. Mm. So it shows up first as what we call as channel pathology first, which creates a deficiency. And if it's not dealt with, then that deficiency then starts affecting the nerves, then it starts affecting the spinal canal, for which those nerves come out of in the cervical spine. And then we have atrophy. Then it's a downhill decline. And he's funny because he said, I got rid of his arthritis in 30 minutes. And the reality is that I just helped his body facilitate itself to heal. That's what happened. That's the reality of it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, yeah.
Now I was just going to ask or mention the Valentine's Day video that you did which is similar to what we're talking about, just releasing old trauma or past relationships. And you had done an episode about that, and then manifesting someone new. Maybe we could switch to that.
Yeah. So going back to books, and if you want a book for relationship health, I think it's Ariel Ford, The Soulmate Secret, is a fantastic book. I believe in anything, also books that it doesn't necessarily have to be relationships. It could be books on manifestation and quantum physics, or shows or movies like The Secret, or the other movie, What the Bleep Do We Know About This World? It's another great movie that talks about manifestation. And so being able to manifest what it is in your life. Do you have space for somebody to come into your life? Do you want space? It's funny. I had a client in San Jose, and she wants a boyfriend, and she's having a hard time. And she's an attractive gal, really intelligent. There's no reason why she shouldn't have a boyfriend. And I said, well, did you open up space? And she goes, you mean open up part of my closet? She goes, no, he has to sleep on the floor. I said, well, if you're not going to open up the space, for him, then he's not going to come in, or she's not going to come in. So open up part of your closet, open up a couple of drawers, right? Those types of things are very useful in being able to pull in. Visualize. One of my favorite things to do that I give to my clients, and we actually print it up. It's called a relationship checklist. And there's 3 columns. And the first column is must-haves. The second column is negotiable. Third column is deal breakers. And so you fill that thing out. What are your must-haves? Well, one of my must-haves, because I had dysfunctional relationships. I was married twice before, and they were dysfunctional marriages and dysfunctional relationships in between. But it went back to my mommy issues. It took me a long time to figure that out. Anyway, so what I did was that I did, okay, what are my must-haves? Well, one of my must-haves was they had to be, the person in my life had to be physically and emotionally available. Yeah. Because the last marriage I was in, she was as cold as ice. Cold. And I would tell her, because I'm very vocal about what I want, I tell her, this is the first relationship where I've been in that I've ever felt so alone in my entire life. And so your must-haves have to be, the more you list, the more clarity you get. Your negotiables, well, do they have kids? Do they have pets? Do you mind if they smoke? I mean, right? And then what are your deal breakers? Being married, maybe having kids, is a deal breaker for you. And so the cool thing about this list is that it doesn't have to be perfect, and it does not have to be exact, but at least by starting it, what you start to show the universe is that now you're getting clarity on what you want. Because superficially, we kind of say what we like, right? I like the person to look this way. I want them to have, I want them to be generous, or, good in bed or, whatever. But they don't know, but then they don't know the other part. So let's say you get somebody who's generous and good in bed, but let's say you didn't manifest for yourself that, the guy or gal, like to eat nachos in bed. I don't know. Right? So getting clarity, I would say too. And what I do with that list is I hang it on your bathroom mirror. That way you study it every day when you get up in the morning, when you go to bed at night. You can always add more to the list. But when you see it and study it, don't do it on your phone, because chances are it's just going to sit in your phone. You're not going to look at it. And then from there, what will happen is that you actually will start to manifest that into your life. Oh, feng shui too. Okay, a little feng shui. So I don't know listeners know much about feng shui, but feng shui is not the cure-all. Like if you change the direction of something, is I'll give you an example. We used to have this master from Santa Rosa, Northern California, north of San Francisco, come and teach a feng shui class. And there's 3 main schools of feng shui, and he would teach all 3 schools. And he was telling us this story. His name is Mark Johnson. He was telling us a story about this guy. He was doing the seminar. This 23-year-old kid wanted to get a girlfriend, couldn't get a girlfriend. And he goes, Mark, I've done everything the feng shui books say to do. So Mark Johnson says, well, the kid says, I've done everything the books say to do. I've added red curtains to my environment. I've candles and a red bedspread and stuff like that, and then Mark looks at him and said, yeah, but you still have to shower. You still have to brush your teeth. You still have to, right? You still have to take care of these common sense things. But feng shui wise also, okay, for myself, for example, after the second marriage, I had another relationship, and I thought that she was my soulmate because I knew her from 12 years before. Mm-hmm. And just to be very transparent, she was a catalyst for me leaving the second marriage. And that was a bunch of chaos. And so anyways, we lasted about 6 months living together, and then I kicked her out. And I was devastated, though. I thought I thought for sure she was it. And so anyways, I took, inside my book, I have a 5-element questionnaire quiz. In that questionnaire quiz, what it'll tell you is that it'll tell you what your primary typology is and then what your deficiency is. And so my heart was so deficient because I was completely cut off. I didn't want to be hurt anymore. I didn't want to love anybody anymore. I didn't want any of that kind of stuff. So what I did was that I was able to put the head of my bed to face the south, because the south direction relates to fire, which relates to the heart. I was able to find these red pyramids. So, because the pyramid shape or the triangle shape also represents the heart as well too, and I was able to put those in the windowsill above my head that faced the south. And just doing those few little things, well, guess what started to happen is I started to draw people into my life that were fire types, meaning people that led with their heart. Now, some of them were manic, I'll be honest with you, but yeah, I eventually was able to heal those wounds, right? And then, and was able to open myself up. So feng shui only accounts for about 10% of your being. That's still 10%. Right? Yeah. It's still 10%.
Yeah, especially if you're trying other stuff, what does it hurt?
All right. What does it hurt to put your head in the bed in the south, or find some red pyramids, or add a couple red candles in your environment? Like, what does it hurt?
Yeah. Is there more to feng shui, or that's because you said there were 3 schools, or is that kind of the gist of it that just try things?
Yeah. Well, this school that I'm talking about is called the 5-element school, and the 5-element school is important because it's based upon your typology. Based upon you, right? And what your deficiency is, and also what your strong point is. Like if you're a wood type or a water type, it tells us what organ governs you, and then what your personality traits should be like. And but the other schools would be like the Black Sect school, and the Compass school would be the other school. Now the Compass school is important because to a certain extent, because it tells us which direction to have things or what kinds of things to add into our environment. So from that angle, it's really important. But if you dive into the depths of that school, mathematically, if you were to follow it to a T, you could be doing your homework on the toilet because the calculation showed that was the best place to do it, which is so what I normally do is I tell people, like, there's some common sense things, for example, like if you're having problems sleeping, for example, I would tell clients, well, don't have your bed in alignment with the door to the bedroom. You want it to the side because you don't want the energy to flow through from the hallway or up the stairs or whatever straight into the bedroom. So there's just some common sense things. Keep your environment clean. Also, that's also good common sense things. And
yeah, I've heard clutter free for sure. Just to, like you said, open space too. But just your mind is cluttered if your space is cluttered. Is what I've heard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's a reflection, right? It's a reflection. If somebody's space is messy, that means that their mind is probably messy too.
It's getting towards the end. So if there's any final comments about what we talked about, and then obviously you can share more about where people can find you as well.
Okay, so just to close up here, I believe that anybody could heal. It does take some application, though. What I love about these practices, because I had a lot of trauma in my life, and I'm sort of speaking from real experience. And don't get me wrong, just because I've been doing this stuff for over 30 years doesn't mean I'm sitting at home meditating, eating vegetables all day. I still have the same BS that goes on in life as everybody else. The difference is that I have these tools in order to process it as it comes in. So if you're interested in diving in deeper and learning more and let's start making change right away. I have something called the Qi Club. It's, that's a live Zoom class every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday from 8 to 8:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And it's a live class. And if you can't meet us at 8 a.m., then you have the Zoom recordings for up to a week. We have people from all over the world. We have about 200 members right now. And we started during the pandemic, and guess what? It really helped people out during the pandemic. So I would do the Qi Club, theqiclub.com, and again, it's spelled QI. So the QIclub.com. Like I said, the YouTube channel. One of the 4 websites that we have is SheltonQigong.com, and if you go there, all my social media handles are there. So Instagram, Facebook, everything else, and you can see a little bit about what we're doing there. My TikTok account, though, which is the one that really is thriving with same thing with YouTube, is Chris_Shelton_Qigong, and that's my TikTok account. In those little videos, I'm giving little simple tips that you could do in a minute or less, and reach out. And I would, like I said, if you're on Tamara's podcast, you're obviously here for a reason. And so I'm very action motivated. So let's take some action steps. What action steps can you take today in order to have the quality of life that you deserve to have? And these practices can definitely give you that quality of life.
Yeah, I agree. I started doing the 30-day challenge after we met and spoke. So I wasn't able to do too many days, but I can see where it could be a thing. So I need to continue. And we talked about the face reading of the face thing too. So I definitely, I'm a true believer in what you have to say. So thank you very much. Go ahead.
Yeah. So if somebody, besides seeing patients in clinic, I do Zoom appointments as well too. And believe it or not, because I can read the face, the tongue, and the Q&A, there's so many gifts or tools that I give people by these Zoom sessions as well too. So if they want to even dive deeper, my big thing is self-empowerment. Let me give you the tools so that way you take care of yourself. That's where the Qigong Club comes in. That's where the 30 Days of Qigong comes in on the YouTube channel. But if someone needs a little bit of more of a nudge or deeper understanding of themselves, then that's where the Zoom appointments come in handy.
Okay. Yeah. All right. And thank you again. And obviously we're all going to learn a lot from this, but it was nice to hear the different organs and what you can do for different things. So, and everyone can relate to having some past trauma or grief or, just crappy relationships as we've, dysfunctional, like you said. So we've all been there, unfortunately, and done that. So the sooner we can stop doing that, the better. So, but But thank you again for being on. And if you like this episode, be sure to tell your friends about it and rate it. And you're listening to Straight from the Source's Mouth. And thank you again, Chris.
Thank you. And we'll talk soon.
All right.
Take care.
Frank Talk, Sex and Dating educates.